just going here, so thanks you all for attending tonight. We'll do some introductions. My name is Eric Stout. I'm the manager of building and bylaw with the Regional District Central Kootenay. Beside me is Sangeeta Sudan, who's the general manager of development services, and Angela Lund is our deputy corporate officer. And on the side there is Mr. Walter Popoff, our director for Area H. So we're here today for the Electoral Area H Dangerous and Aggressive Dog Control Service Establishment. So starting off with a little bit of history here. Aggressive dogs at large in the Slocan Valley was identified as an issue for the community. As a result, at the direction of the board of directors, the RDCK, oh, there we go, one last attendee. Thank you. There's coffee and cookies over there.
Thank you.
We just started, by the way, so.
I apologize.
Okay, we just got going. As a result, at the direction of the board of directors, the RDCK conducted a survey of electoral area H residents in early 2020 regarding public interest in adopting a dog control bylaw in their area. 692 mailed responses and 210 online responses were received for a combined response rate of 40% of the population. Of those who responded, 53% supported a dog control bylaw in electoral area H. As a result of the survey, the board directed staff to prepare a service case analysis on the implications of establishing a dog control bylaw for the entirety of electoral area H. Here's some stats from spring of 2024 to September of 2025 for all RDCK areas. And what this shows is the areas and then dog control. What we presented here are dog control bylaw queries because some of the electoral areas do not have any dog control services. So you can see here in area H, if you can't see that, from that period of time, we had 36 queries of people calling for various dog issues, but some of those dog issues were identified potentially because they're not investigated. There's no real certainty as far as whether they were deemed aggressive or dangerous, but these are the queries we received either from the online complaint survey that we have and or calls to the RDCK or emails we received. This is an interesting chart here where it shows the areas with dog control in the entire RDCK versus areas with no dog control. So you can see, hopefully you can see that, but the lighter color blue are the areas where we have no dog control areas. And then the darker color is where we have dog control bylaw services. And I just want to be clear, some of this, like in some of the areas we have dog control for loose dogs, wandering dogs. I just want to really identify this down for you. This is solely dangerous and aggressive dogs for area H. It's not for loose dogs, okay? So there's a little bit of interpolation there. But you can see in the areas, like out of the light blue, area H actually had the most queries for dog control. So, what is considered an aggressive dog? Any dog without provocation has displayed aggressive behavior toward another person, dog, or animal. Any dog which, without provocation, has no tendency or disposition to attack and or cause injury to other animals or humans without provocation. And any dog that has been deemed an aggressive dog by a dog control officer. Any dog declared a dangerous dog by a court in the province of BC. By a court in the province of BC. So, out of, in coordination with this bylaw, there's section 49 of the community charter, okay, which grants kind of this authority to have this bylaw, and it's one of the more important components of why we're here. So, section 49 of the community charter defines a dangerous dog as has killed or seriously injured a person. B, has killed or seriously injured a domestic animal while in a public place or while on private property, other than property owned or occupied by the person responsible for the dog, or an animal control officer has reasonable grounds to believe is likely to kill or seriously injure a person. Okay, so what we're going to do here is there's a Q&A period, obviously, for questions regarding this, but I think at this time, we'll probably turn it over. So, would you like to do your presentation? We have a presentation as well on the voting aspect of this. And
I think we should first do some
Q&A? Okay. So let's do some Q&A. For anybody who has questions regarding the actual bylaw and the services related to it.
Well, you've already asked, sorry, can I put my hand up? You want to go?
Go.
Okay. I'm Vita. I live in Sandon, Area H, probably the boundary that way. You've answered one of the questions. So, how is this bylaw going to prevent dog attacks?
Well, the bylaws are complaint driven, okay? So, I think historically you can see the stats where there's an increase of people in the community reaching out to us when they know there's a bylaw in place. So I think the prevention is a matter of people being aware that the service is available to them.
I have more filled out.
So, yeah, if you go back to the slide with the bar graphs,
Sure.
it's kind of funny, the difference in interpretation.
This one?
Yeah, so that, when I see that Area H has a dog bylaw.
Sorry, it's just the color. No, Area H does not have a dog
sorry,
control.
Area E.
Area E, yes, they
And
do.
it seems to have the highest number of problems. So it looks like it's actually accomplished exactly opposite of the intent.
Well, no, I think you also look at population in a certain area, so you have a higher density of population in E, okay?
So that doesn't talk about population.
Well, it doesn't talk about population, correct, but when there's a service available to the people, they're utilizing it more.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So, like I call this the Hatfield versus McCoy bylaw.
Okay.
Right? So I don't know if you know that story, it's feuding neighbors that have been feuding for hundreds of years. Like, how much of this is actual dogs that have attacked people? And how much of it is people complaining because the neighbor's dog pooped on their lawn?
A good question. Yes, no, those are the stats that we have available because we haven't been tracking stats related to essentially, like, if you want to compare it to Area E, is that what you're looking
Well, I'm
for?
just looking at this chart. I look at this chart and it shows me that the dog bylaw is actually not working. Because you said it's preventative. So if it's preventative, why would the numbers be going up?
I said it was preventive because it allows people to call and make a complaint. So the opportunity is there.
Because we're talking about a lifetime tax for everybody, for something that we still don't see that it's actually a problem. Like, I know there are incidents, or there are occasionally attacks. And if it's okay, I would like to ask the RCMP.
100%.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
next.
Here, I can just stand. You guys can super easy going.
So my question really is, I'm not trying to diminish when somebody gets attacked.
Yeah.
Like, that would be the wrong thing to do. But like, my question really simply to you is, if I go out this afternoon and a dog attacks me, like I leave here and a dog attacks me and I end up in the hospital and I'm gonna be there for weeks, and somebody calls you, are you gonna do something?
So the first step is to call RDCK to go through that process, and then like our spot is to be very obviously I can't speak on the law or the idea of what recommendation, but in basically I guess what I'm saying is the first call is RDCK. They look at the dog call, they'll investigate it and determine if there's safety risks. They may call us to keep the peace.
So what if there's no RDCK? You're just gonna let people get killed by dogs?
So no. So the community charter does apply, but I'll be very honest, and I'm sure some people in this room would really not like that, but I'm going to be honest. The community charter is extremely weak. So if you look at I looked into it myself. So when you start a town or a village, there's a legal framework, right, for bylaws and rules, whatever. That's where the community charter comes in. It's the initial framework for legislation within that town or village. Now, the community charter under Section 49 allows us to be designated by a town as a animal control officer, the appointed one, or if there's something so grievous that we have to get involved, and we do, right? The reality of our position is we aren't trained in animal apprehension, or I'll be honest, I don't have a pole that can grab dogs, right?
Yes, I'm not talking about the dog part, I'm talking about would you want to lay criminal charges against somebody, what if the dog kills somebody?
Yeah, so that would be completely different than, we would
Yeah,
have
that's
to
kind of
look
what
at.
I'm specifically talking about a vicious dog attacking somebody, putting them in the hospital.
Yeah.
Or work.
So a lot of the times I find that tends to go civil. People will go civil.
Okay, so that's a great point.
Yeah, like a lot of people will. There has to be a lot of assault weapon could apply with a dog, but there's going to come down to the Crown or defense having to prove the person didn't have control of their dog, it wasn't leashed, et cetera, right? So it's kind of hard to answer your question completely because each situation is different.
I understand.
But I want to be honest, there's right now, without this, we have very little authority to get involved. Even if someone like my dog were like, hey, attack Jim or whatever, right? There's nothing I can do about that, right? And the bylaws allow the RDCK to speak to property owners or the owners of the dog and to, I don't know what the approach would be, but maybe initially educate and then go from there. And I'll be honest out here, we're limited to what we can do because as you know, in this area, we go from Summit Lake to Winlaw, we have a big area, we can't be everywhere, so we have to triage things based on severity and priority, right?
Right.
So sometimes we'll call our partners like SPCA sometimes, or we'll call the RDCK and say, hey, we're having these issues, can you guys mind looking into this? Because we have bigger fish to fry, so to speak, right?
Okay.
But the one thing I can say is we do get a high number of dog calls from between Winlaw and basically Enterprise Creek. I'll be honest, probably 20% of our calls are dog calls, and it's either someone's been attacked on the rail trail, someone's had a dog off leash and chased somebody, a dog's attacked a mom with a kid at the what's that called, right beside the Winlaw Bridge, that little park people use for walking. Yeah, beach park. So we do get a lot of calls for dog issues, I'll be honest. And our frustration is that we have very little authority to act on these things, to actually it'd be no different than a noise bylaw or an unsightly premise property, right, where it gives you the police the power to get in front of somebody and speak to them, and if they've given an actual written warning, and then if they do it again, then it gives us the authority to give someone a citation if we need to, right? Obviously, our approach is always approach things in a lesser means first, and then go from there.
Okay.
Thanks so much for that. And I'm just going to turn the floor to some issues if you promised to.
So I've been operating this dog control service since where they are applicable for 16 years. And we have to work in coordination with the RCMP. Like he mentioned, what's your name?
Sheldon.
Sheldon,
Yeah.
okay. Like Sheldon mentioned, they don't have the capacity to, hold and whatnot to grab these dogs when the incident occurs. And they can respond to the attack right away, more or less. If they're not dealing with a criminal matter or a domestic violence matter, they can respond to the dog incident right away, especially because we don't work weekends and in the evenings, they're always around. It's after the fact that they need to deal with this. They may respond to the incident and the dog will be maybe still with the owner, but because maybe that dog has been a chronic biter or a chronic attacker of other humans or other dogs, in order for us to address that issue, we have to have a bylaw in place, and that supports the RCMP as well, in that we can take it up a notch. We can, the bylaw we're proposes to register aggressive dogs. So if there's an aggressive dog incident that we get notified about, we can register that dog, and we can monitor through other complaints coming in if that dog continuously attacks. And then we can look at maybe talking to lawyers and dealing with that incident. And so that's how we would approach a situation where a potential dog attack occurred and it happened during a weeknight or a weekend or even during the day, but we weren't able to respond quickly, but the RCMP did. And then after the fact, we used the strength of the bylaw plus section 49 to then deal with the dangerous dog or aggressive dog incident. There's been a few big incidents in this area, mainly in the cusp. We had one.
Big attacks?
Yeah,
Or
we
should
had.
there's a distinction between the incident?
It's an attack on, one was an attack on a young baby, it bit its face, the dog bit its face. And so the dog was eventually euthanized. We took, like the RCMP were involved, and we were involved, and we took action. Eventually the owner of the dog said, yeah, we gotta euthanize the dog, and that's how we dealt with it. Our bylaw states that, like how we deal with these incidents. We had another one, again in the cusp, where a dog was biting people, attacking people. The owner was not giving up the dog, and we had to coordinate with the RCMP to go and grab the dog. And then, because the owner was not agreeing that the dog was aggressive, even though there have been many incidents, and we held the dog for a period of time, and we went through the legal process to get the dog deemed dangerous, and then it was euthanized. So the RCMP doesn't have time for all that. We do all that stuff in the background, and that's what the bylaw authorizes us to do. But the intention is always to educate first. If there's an incident, to tell people, hey, you gotta chain your dog up. Some people have dogs that are guard dogs, so don't let them loose because they might attack people on the street. And I know I've been chased, and my car's been chased by aggressive dogs, and I've been in the Spokane Pelicans and charged by a dog. So it happens. Now, if we were to register those dogs, and if those incidents turn vicious, where the dog's biting someone, then we could actually start taking action, working with the property owner. And if they don't get into compliance, we can ticket them. And that's another way of dealing with it. And actually, that's a better taxpayer use of money to deal with dogs through ticketing, because then you recover that money, and maybe you've had an opportunity to educate that dog owner on what to do with their dog that is so aggressive. And then we can even escalate it beyond that if we have to, as I mentioned in the other two incidents. But the intention of the bylaw is to just allow for residents to feel safe when they're in a neighborhood where there's been a lot of aggressive dogs, in the dog incidents, 1 or 2 dogs. And we've had many calls from even the villages themselves who are looking at this. Maybe they might be interested, but at the end, it's mostly, what we're proposing is mostly for Area H in the rural area. So that's how the dog control service operates. And we have staff who are very much in tune with ticketing and dealing with legal matters, and so they support that implementation.
Okay, so you said lots of things. Do you want to go read that and ask a couple of questions? Yeah.
And I apologize, my partner Vita is far more knowledgeable about this than I am. I just haven't had the time to be involved too much. But one of my concerns is always trying to keep the taxation down as much as we can. People are struggling right now, and so that's a concern of mine. But also, I look at an area of this size and realize it's far different than a municipality where everything is close at hand, and especially for SPCA and RCMP. I mean, it's virtually impossible to be, you can't be in more than one place, and we're far apart oftentimes. If something's happening down at Winlaw and something's happening up here, how does that happen? But anyway, my question is, in a municipal type setting, dog licensing is a very common practice, and it does 2 things. One is it gives the authorities essential data about the dog owners, probably the dog, and it collects money. And that goes right back to some of the early municipalities here in the late 1800s where there were dog licenses. And I just wonder if that isn't somehow useful in this process. For one, just it's an opportunity that, just like a car, when you license your car, you understand the rules, and there's laws, and you abide by them if you're an honest citizen. So there's that. There's the education part that says, your dog, and you have to comply with these rules. But also, whether it's $50 or $100 or whatever it is for an annual dog license, that goes into the kitty and helps make all these things possible without it becoming a burden on the taxpayer as much. And I mean, really, it's about dogs, so the dog owners rightfully should pay. That's just how I see user pay kind of things. Anyway, that was
Can
just,
I, respond to both of your points there?
Yeah.
So in regards to, the size of the area, yes, absolutely. We have some large electoral areas where we have dog control service. We respond to complaints. So we're not gonna be out there patrolling the streets. That's a waste of taxpayer dollar. Who wants to drive in a car that now gas prices are up? So that's not what we're proposing. What we're proposing is we respond to complaints. And it could be in Windlaw, it could be in Spokane Park. Related to the dog licensing, there's a whole bureaucracy around that. And you have to be willing to license your dog. And you have to have zoning that allows you to have a certain amount of dogs on your property. And that right now, there is nothing in this electoral area to control that type of land use, which includes housing dogs. We do have limits on the number of dogs you can have in a property in some of our other electoral areas, but not obviously in Area H. So licensing is a whole bureaucracy. Why don't we license businesses? Municipalities do it. It's because there's a whole bureaucracy around that. And you have to be willing to license your business. You have to be willing to license your dog. And so it's a proactive approach, and in cities they do that because the bylaws are out and they look for collars. Here, because we're not doing patrols, we're not proposing that, that will be difficult to manage.
Yeah, somebody outside asking questions. You can hear the dog barking out there.
There's also an administrative cost to managing that licensing program.
And that's the bureaucracy.
and perhaps I'm just overly simple about it, but I was thinking that the money raised through dog licensing would cover the bureaucracy and a little bit more, but maybe I'm just naive.
Yeah, I think what he said, like when I say bureaucracy, I mean the administrative piece, and then you have to be actually, as a dog owner, be willing to license your dog. Or we have to go enforce it, but that's not gonna work either. It's just gonna mean we'll have to have more bylaw officers out there, and that's just more money coming into the kitty.
I know in other municipalities that the collections from, say, dog licensing is in small comparison to the cost of administering that service.
Okay. What is a dog license cost, or anybody know?
It's been a while since
I
I've
live
lived in
in a
municipalities.
I live in a rural area, so.
It totally depends. Like I know when I lived in the city, first dog was $25 for 30, and then it was like 40 for 2 or something. And then if you get up early, they give you $5 discount. So it just depends on each municipality. Yeah. But generally speaking, it's like $20-25 a dog, and it's for the year. And
I would like to hear from the SPCA about any of, like, are you hearing complaints in this area as well?
Definitely, yeah. But we always direct them back to you guys, so whatever, if they're following through with that phone call, then you're probably already seeing those stats.
what's challenging for us is like, so the SPCA deals with like animal cruelty, so to speak, like generally, right? Like, and obviously our portfolio is enforcement, right? So right now, like, we don't have any enforcement, right? Like, I can just go speak to Hal, and if Hal's a good, respectable guy, hey man, just going to talk to you about this, give you a warning. Yeah, if Hal's a great guy, Hal will comply, so to speak, and be like, I don't want any issues. But for 9 out of 10 people that I deal with, it's like, there's no consequences. Why would I follow it? You know? So it's a challenging thing, and I respect people talking about like the cost of things, like I definitely do. But the reality is, and I'm sure Walter probably gets tons of emails like I do, and I have to act within the scope of my authorities, right? So for us, bylaws are very low, and then it's, provincial statutes, and then federal, and so on and so forth, right? So we can only act within our scope of our job too, right? I'm never going to do anything that's illegal or unlawful to people, because I don't agree with that, and also I took an oath to uphold the charter rights and freedoms of Canadians, right? So I can talk to people about their dogs, But me just being a nice guy or even raising my voice to them, it's not gonna do anything, I'll be honest. Like, that's the frustration from our standpoint, our office, like we get calls and we want to help, but we're limited in what we can do, right? And we've had some serious incidents in Slocan, we've had serious incidents in Winlaw, where, you know, children or women have been hurt. And I know older lady in Slocan actually got charged by a dog. I don't think she was bit, but she ended up having to go to the hospital with a trail for 3 weeks and had knee surgery, right? So that's pretty serious, right? So, and then like they kind of touched on the parameters of Section 49 of Community Charter, like it gives them the authority to seize a dog for 21 days. It's all public information, you can read it, but 21 days, and then in that 21 days, they make an application to the courts to deem that this dog meets the criteria for a dangerous dog. And then, right, so there's all that behind the scenes that they have to do, which is, you know, a lot of work on their end too, because they have to write a court package up and explain the circumstances and make sure all the elements of the fence are there and that this dog is deemed dangerous, right?
So in theory, that's not happening right now at all.
Right now, no.
So you guys aren't doing anything right now?
Well, like, so right now, they're receiving calls and they're going,
Okay.
you know.
So you touched on a very interesting thing, which was people in Slocan. So I understand Slocan as their own dog bylaw thing. And so, or
They don't.
The
So
village does that?
the village, so this is the tricky one too. Slocan does have a bylaw,
Right.
but they don't have us written into it, and there's no enforcement. So you can have a bylaw without enforcement. So,
Right.
so that's basically the ability not to ticket, right? So as you can appreciate, like let's say you work in Toronto, and someone's got a noise complaint. You know, you give them one warning, you come back a second time, and if it's a reoccurring problem, you start giving them citations, and then every time they break that, it keeps going up and up and up, and there's consequences to that, right? And I'm just using Slocan as an example. Those are 2 big files that I thought of that people have been attacked. But I've had lots in Winlaw. Like I've had at least 1 or 2 at least between, you know, Hills all the way to Winlaw. Like I've had bigger files in each little village that's impacted people's well-being, right? And obviously I hear the frustration from people, right? Because we're the sounding board, right?
Yeah, so that's, like we talked about, I've been thinking about this, like, so I just see the budget, I don't mean to take other people's, I see the budget and I just see, there seems to be no limits in it, and I just see that, like, what happens if somebody gets bitten by a dog from somebody who's here from Chicago? Right? So this bylaw's not gonna help that. So we're not actually preventing people from getting bit. But we're going to spend tax money forever. And so it concerns me. And like, when we look at other bylaws, usually they have limits of how much you can spend. This one doesn't have any limits. And it has things like insurance for $241 a year. And like, I'm thinking, okay, I'm hiring somebody that's going to do this dangerous thing with these dogs. I don't know what planet we're living on, but I'm pretty sure the insurance isn't going to be $241 a year to insure that person.
So, if I can take it, the cost of the service is broken out by the things that we need in order to make the bylaw operational, and also the staff, yeah. And so right now, we're operating several dog control services, and we have a requisition amount, which is the highest taxation you can get. So there is a cap. You can't go beyond a certain number without the board making a decision on whether or not to increase it. And then in today's world, there's unlikely chance of a requisition being increased unless it is for a good reason. So the board makes those decisions, not us. But there is a cap on how much taxation is collected for a service. And then it's broken out. So how we deliver dog control service is through contractors. We hire a person who's trained as a dog control officer who has maybe a kennel facility to keep the dog, because the RCMP does not have that. SPCA doesn't have that ability to hold a dog. So we pay for all of that use as well with that person. give them the equipment, a phone, and whatnot. And so the phone is there for when that complaint comes in. So those are all factors that we think about and budget for when we put forward a budget for dog control service. And depending on, and we go to RFP, the request for proposals, to hire a dog control officer. So we put out the parameters of what we want this service to have, and we put it out there to the public in an open process. People can bid for that RFP, they can put their proposals in, we go through them, and we base our decision on cost, experience, etc. And surprisingly, a lot of our dog control officers don't actually cost that much from a contract, in their contracts. And so the services are pretty minimal. Like I think area E and F, our total cost for the contractor is, I think, 30,000. Yeah, it's 30,000 for, if you've got RDCK service budgets, it's a service 183, 82, maybe 83. And we don't, like, we only hire and pay for the service that we want. So we don't max out the requisition in any of those services as long as I've been here.
Yeah, so like I'm looking at this, like we've done some research. Area 9 and J spends about 17,000.
Yeah.
The budget that you're asking people to vote yes to wants to spend is 42,000.
So that's the maximum, right? And when we go to contract out a dog control officer, we'll put out that proposal, they'll bid, we look at price, we look at experience, and we assess based on that who we're gonna hire. And most of those services, we don't go to the max on the taxation because we've managed to keep it lower than that. But where that taxation can come in handy, if it ever is needed, is in dealing with if there is a really bad incident, then dealing with that and paying for the cost of dealing with that. We usually reverse the cost back to the dog owner, so we can try to recover that cost from the dog owner. We'll hire lawyers and fight them in court and get some money back. But there are some incidents where I mentioned that one incident where the owner didn't want to give up the dog. We had to absorb that.
When was that?
In a custom.
Or when?
Oh, that was
Like 2015 or something.
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah, 2023, I want to think. I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, like, you have legal fees here of 20 grand and 15 grand. From the reports, actually from your own staff,
Yeah.
your actual report was that there is actually, Tom Dool's memo of November 2025 says these incidents or attacks are not common, which, based on the population, for me, it's not should be true.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, so I've been hearing, I don't remember exactly which document, but I've been hearing maybe 1 or 2 dogs are going to be in the pound. So we're talking about $50,000 a dog could be in the pound, if these numbers are accurate.
These numbers are projections, and the highest amount, again, we never hit those numbers. It's like building your budget with a little bit of reserve. That's what it is. And if we don't use that money, it gets back to the taxpayer. It's not, you don't use that money.
When you say it's going to get back, is it going to go in the reserve or is it
No,
going
we
to come
just
back?
don't
in
use
the
that
tax?
money, so the taxpayer.
Is that accurate? Well,
I don't-
that's
If
not
there's
what
a-
we've seen happening. in the
Hold
world.
on, let me finish. If there is, that budget is a projection of what the requisition will be. What we build as a budget for that service will be based on who we hire as a contractor. So there's 2 budgets that end up being in place. One is the budget that we put out for the maximum requisition, and because Area H is quite large, and because we're hearing of many complaints, the projection that Tom put in there is what he thinks may be some of those dogs that already are known by the community as being aggressive. Now, once the bylaw comes into play, whammy, we're gonna be hitting the ground running if this bylaw passes to go and take enforcement action on those dogs. And so that is assuming we're gonna do that right away. But eventually, once people understand what the bylaw is about and they become aware of incidents where they've had enforcement action taken, those incidents will go down. So yes, what I'm trying to say is that's the highest amount we can go in the budget, but it's unlikely we will hit that right away. We will eventually when people get more familiar with the bylaw and are starting to file complaints. And then eventually that will taper down. And that's the cycle I've seen over the years. Once you introduce a bylaw, there's slow uptick and then it peaks and then it goes down and we see less incidents or complaints related to that bylaw. And it applied to unsightly noise as well.
I have a question. My question is this, you have talked about complaints that you receive. Is it possible that you're receiving several complaints related to maybe 1 or 2 dogs? So therefore, you're assuming that there are a lot of dogs in the area that are dangerous, whereas it may only be 1 or 2 and several complaints that are not adhered to. So we're looking at introducing a tax to cover really maybe 2 or 3 bad dogs.
We heard from the RCMP and the SPCA that they received complaints. Eric?
Yeah, no,
Well, I understand complaints.
Yes, no, I hear what you're saying.
Are they the same?
Is it the same dog? We don't know.
we don't know that, but let's, RCMP identified 20% of the calls they're getting into their office are aggressive dogs and danger, no certainty because there's been no investigation, okay, as far as whether they're deemed to be that, but the calls are coming in, and Area H, we'd like to show you that back on this slide here.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
But I'm just saying logically, you could receive several complaints pertaining to 1 or 2 dogs instead of 15 dogs.
So I can answer that for you, because most of the complaints go to the RCMP, and then they complain to the director, they call the RDCK office. We don't have a bylaw, so they call me. So when you say 1 or 2 dogs, we have a population of 5,000 in Area H roughly, give or take 25 one way or the other. Census coming up will probably be more. So when you mentioned Area I has only a population of around 2,000 as compared. And that dog control bylaw is not all of Area I, only portions of it. That is the major difference. Now, when I get a complaint from Hills about a dog, and I get a complaint from Crescent Valley about a dog, it's not the same dog. There are complaints coming in. There's a lot of different dogs that are there, and probably the RCMP can respond to that. They've responded to many dog complaints, and it's generally not the same dog. I mean, it could be in one particular area, the same dog, but the area is big, 200 kilometers from one end to the other end.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
But Sheldon did say 20% of the calls are between Winlaw and Enterprise Creek.
I didn't hear you.
Sheldon did say that 20% of the calls are from between Winlaw and Enterprise Creek.
That's right, and that's basically the RCMP out of their New Denver detachment goes as far as Pedro. And then the Nelson detachment takes over from Pedro, goes all the way back to South Spokane. So it's 2 different detachments that address that. Now, I do have a letter from a constable in New Denver where I followed through about them addressing the issue about dogs through the Community Charter Section 49, and I actually talked to the Attorney General about that, and they said yes, they have the ability to enforce it, but they don't have the place to have the dog impounded. And here's a response that I got from a constable out of New Denver. And the constable's name was Ben Nickerson. I don't know if you remember him or not.
He's before my time. I heard his name.
Yeah, it was before your time. He says, I've been investigating a matter in Winlaw where a woman was bitten by a loose dog and a second woman had her clothes bitten and torn by the same dog. My supervisor has instructed me to write a report to Crown Council to make application before a judge to have the dog deemed dangerous in accordance with the Local Government Act, and that's section 49. I have contacted Crown, and the Crown advised me that they are not responsible for bringing such matters before the court, but that in the past it was the responsibility of bylaw enforcement officer, and that is our bylaw enforcement officer that we're going to have on every age if the bylaw passes. Obviously, there would be no bylaw officer to bring the matter before the court, as there is no animal control bylaw in area H. So, in response to the constable here, is they can go out there, they can warn but they cannot take any action. Even if they bring it in front of the Crown Council, there's no action unless we have a bylaw in place, and our bylaw enforcement will take that action.
And the one thing that the courts need to see for certain offenses, like for this, you see like repetitive things. So like, let's say it's the same dog. Hey, we've had 3 complaints, we've given them a warning, we've given them citations, it continues. Now we're going by the route of the dangerous dog application. That's where we would have more like teeth, so to speak, right? That's the one thing that Walter's mentioning about, right? And to answer your question, like some days we'll get the same dog, the same incident. We get called 9 times between the village and people, but then the next day it's some other dog in lower in the other part of the valley, right? Like we do get calls in the hills, we get calls in Denver.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that's logical, but I think that if there's 9 calls for one dog, it really kind of skews the statistics, right?
Yeah, no, I can appreciate
It
what
makes it
you're
look
saying.
like there's a bigger problem than there truly is.
I can tell you that looking at complaints that come in over the entire RDCK, you're not wrong. There might be weeks where this dog is running at large and running loose, and it'll escalate with a single dog. But be mindful of over the course of a whole year. Be mindful of people moving to the area. Be mindful of people coming for holidays here. These are all things that kind of are not really isolated to one dog. I'm going to move things along here because we got another part of our presentation, being mindful of time. So Angela is going to pick up the assent vote process.
Thank you. I'm Angela Lund, and I'm the Deputy Chief Elections Officer. I'm acting on behalf of Tom Duell, who is our Chief Elections Officer, who couldn't be here tonight to talk about the assent vote process. So I'm just going to this service establishment bylaw, in order for the board is required to seek approval of the local government inspector and the electors prior to adoption of a proposed service establishment bylaw. So this is part of the Local Government Act, section 342, subsection 1. In the instance that approval must be sought, in this instance, it's going to be sought through assent vote, which is our Local Government Act, section 344, subsection 1. An assent vote is a referendum of eligible electors. For an assent vote to be successful, we have to have at least 50% of the participating eligible electors must agree to the proposed measures. So in this case, it would be our service bylaw 3066. The assent vote question that is going to be on the ballot. So we do have an additional assent vote, the advance vote. We have an additional advance vote, and we also have the general voting day. So I will show that slide a little bit later. We have multiple options for voting within the area as well as mail ballot, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. You'll see on the ballot, this is the question that's being proposed, and I'm going to read it out just so everyone is aware. Electoral Area H, Dangerous and Aggressive Dog Control Establishment Bylaw number 3066, 2025, will allow the regional district to establish a service for the regulation of dangerous and aggressive dogs in Electoral Area H and to establish a maximum annual allowable requisition not to exceed the greater of $109,741 or the amount resulting from a rate of 0.077 per 1,000, applied to the actual net taxable value of land and improvements in the service area. The question that is on the ballot is, are you in favor of the regional district adopting Electoral Area H Dangerous and Aggressive Dog Control Service Establishment Bylaw number 3066, 2025, yes or no? So that is the question that everyone will see on the ballot. In order for this process, for the electors, the eligible electors, include a residential elector or a non-resident elector. The eligible resident electors are residents that are of Electoral Area H, so live in, 18 years of age or older on general voting day, a Canadian citizen, a resident of British Columbia for at least 6 months immediately before the day of registration, and not disqualified under the Local Government Act or any other enactment from voting in an election or assent voting, and not otherwise disqualified by law. So this is what is in the Local Government Act that we follow as staff for this voting process. Basically, if you live in Area H and can vote in a provincial or federal election, you can vote in the assent vote. For our eligible non-resident electors, they do not reside in Electoral Area H. They are registered owners of real property in Electoral Area H for at least 30 days before the day of registration, are 18 years of age on the general voting day, are Canadian citizens, are residents of British Columbia for at least 6 months immediately before the day of registration, and again, are not disqualified under the Local Government Act or any other enactment from voting in an election or assent vote, and not otherwise disqualified by law. So in this case, for a non-resident elector, there is only one vote. So in the assent vote altogether, one vote, each person gets one vote. And in this case, if there are multiple property owners on the title of the real property and they do not live there, one person may participate as the non-resident elector with the consent of the other owners. So if you do not live at the residence, but you own the property and you may own it with multiple people, you must have the consent of those other owners in order to place your vote.
Question, how does that work for renters?
Renters are living as residents, and so they can be on the voters list.
And the property owner can also vote?
As a non-resident, yeah, so they're allowed one vote. So then there's kind of, I'm looking here, sorry, I'm looking over Tom's slide. The elector registration. So if you are a resident elector and already on the provincial voting list, so this comes when you come to the ballot and you come to vote at the assent vote at one of the locations, or if you request a mail-in ballot, you are already registered for the assent vote. So if you live in Electoral Area H and you are part of the provincial voting list, you come in and you vote. We're not going to make you do any other forms or papers. If you are a non-resident elector and not currently registered, you can register at the polls on the advanced voting date. And so this means advanced or the general voting date, so any of those dates at the polls. There are forms that you would have to fill out, and there, on the next slide, it identifies the type of identification that you would need. And so if you are a resident, but you aren't on the voters list, there will be a form, I believe it's 200M, that will be filled out. This form would be filled out, you'd have to show specific identification, and that form would then go to the province to add you to the provincial voters list. if you're a non-resident, we have a form that is filled out that identifies that you're a non-resident voter. And there's multiple owners, you would have to have the consent of the other property owners as well. So it's being mindful that if you are a non-resident and you want to vote at this assent vote, you have to make sure that you have the other property owner's consent as well if there's multiple owners. If you're a non-resident and you're the only owner of that property, you have to fill out the form and you have one vote. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I have to touch base with everything. Sorry. If you intend to register at the polls, there are 3 options for identification. There is a very comprehensive list on Elections BC's website. We've given some examples here. So option 1, you can have one piece of ID, but it has to be one of the things that is listed there. So your BC driver's license, your BC identification card, service card, etc. So you can have one piece of that type of ID. Option 2, it's 2 pieces of ID, and it's from that list underneath, as well as probably a few more options on the Elections BC site. I think we kind of ran out of room here for all of the options. So it's definitely worth taking a peek at if you're looking at bringing ID. Also, there is a 3rd option now, and the identification can be vouched for by another, and the voucher must prove they are a registered voter resident in the voter's electoral district, a spouse, a parent, a grandparent, adult child, adult grandchild, or adult sibling of the voter, or a person with the authority to make personal care decisions for the voter. So there are different options for identification, and just to be aware of those options before coming to the voting polls. All of our dates and the community halls that we will be at during the advanced polls as well as the general polls are listed here. They are also on our website. So as you can see down below, there's the rdck.ca/area-h-dogs. That links you straight to the website where we have more information. We have the list of notifications that have gone out, and we will have information on our mail-in ballot, a little bit more detail on our mail-in ballot. So we do, because as Walter said, the population of electoral area H is 5,000. Legislatively, we're required to have an additional advance poll, which is why we are having 3 polls here. Normally, you've seen in other cases that it may be 2, but in area H, it will be 3. May 20th, we are, the polling stations are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. As of 8 p.m., the doors lock. We will have one at Knox Hall and Winlaw Community Hall. The additional advanced poll is on May 27th, again from 8 to 8. And this is at the Hills Community Hall. And then we have our general polls, which is the general voting day on May 30th, 8 to 8 at Crescent Valley Hall, Knox Hall, and Winlaw Community Hall. If you cannot make one of the voting polls, you can call us at the RDCK or request a mail-in ballot starting, it was on May 1st. And it will go till May 27th that you can make the mail-in ballot request. And then as of May 30th, the day of the general voting, at 8 p.m. is when the last mail-in ballot can be received. So you can mail in the ballots, you can drop them off or you can have someone drop them off at the advanced poll or the general voting polls, but it does need to be with us. The mail-in ballots need to be with us as of May 30th before 8 p.m. But the cutoff to request is May 27th, so it's 3 days before the general voting that we cut off any requests to mail-in ballots. And the reason for this is we have to be able to provide the election officials with the final voters list and make sure that those that have already voted by mail-in ballot have been struck from the voters list and things like that. So there's a little bit of administrative work that we have to do to make sure that everyone that has done a mail-in ballot has been already identified on the voters lists for those, for the general polls. That's pretty much everything in regards to the assent vote. Does anyone have any questions in regards to that process? Everyone's okay? The best thing to do is go and vote.
Peter, you had a question?
It's more just to share, maybe you've heard this, but just recently, and this has been ongoing on the rail grade above Nelson, their Mountain Station area, and but just recently somebody had posted on the Nelson BC page that he was attacked, and his dog was attacked by 5 roaming dogs. And when you go through that entire thread, and I've heard this scenario many times, I've been in the Kootenays for 10 years now, and I've heard this scenario happen many, many times. And it's the same dogs, it's the same owner. Everybody knows who it is. Right away, as soon as the person said it, everybody knew exactly who they were. If the city of Nelson can't control the dangerous dogs, and these dogs have been known to attack numerous times on numerous occasions, how is ARH going to be able to do that?
Well, I don't know that circumstance. I don't know what the dog control service enables them to do in the city of Nelson. I'm not familiar with their bylaw. But in this area, any place that the dog was to attack another human would be a place where we could enforce the bylaw. And so I don't know what the circumstances with the city of Nelson is. And as I was answering this gentleman's question earlier, is, you know, if the bylaw passes and it is in place, it's going to be a slow creep up to receiving complaints. It's going to take a while for people to even know about it. Once we do get those complaints, then you're going to see a peak in our enforcement. And it could be just 3 or 4 dogs in all of Area H. And then once we take enforcement action and start processing those things, you might see a little bit of a slump. And you might get little bumps every now and then with dog incidents. But the intention there is to make sure people have a way to register these complaints. Right now, all they can do is go to the RCMP, and the RCMP can maybe go and have a conversation with the dog owner. I won't speak for you, but they can't do anything beyond that. What we could do is we can actually investigate. We can actually then take that investigation and, if needed, take it to civil court and try to get that dog deemed dangerous at some point in that proceeding.
I understand the process. I just think it's funny, you know, there was thousands of people that lived here back in the late 1890s, early 1900s, and they managed to function just fine without services. They did the cowboy method and just took care of business themselves, right? I'm not proposing that.
And discharging a firearm has its own.
Well, the other thing too is that we live in Sandon. We deal with dogs all the time. Like, I take matters in my own hand. I don't kill dogs, but I do take matters in my own hand. And that our biggest issue is dogs off leash and stuff like that. That's our number one problem in Sandon. And because we're a tourist attraction, and we get upwards, especially from July and August, we can get anywhere from 300 to 600 people a day coming to visit. And of course, there's people with the dogs. You're constantly dealing, and we're constantly having to deal with that. Most people are actually really, really, really good. Where I'm going with this is that we also have wildlife. And we all know in this region, when we're out on these trails, especially coming up to berry season, we're dealing with bears on these trails. Grizzlies are very well known in hills. That's very common to have grizzly sightings up there. People are usually pretty prepared to deal with those type of animals. Why aren't people being educated to be prepared to deal with dogs? like, because we're told to have bear spray, be prepared for wildlife encounters all the time.
Yeah, for bears, you have the Wild Safe program, you have education out there. We all live in this part of the world, in the bush, more or less. And so we're aware of a lot of animals. Dogs are a different thing. Sometimes people know that the right thing to do if their dog is an aggressive dog is to keep it on leash. But there are some people who don't do that. They don't fence it in. And so these are the people we're going to be addressing, not the people that are doing the right thing. Those people are
But
good.
you're not controlling a bear either.
But we're
Right.
not, but
No, I'm just saying, I'm using it as
Bears-
an analogy.
yeah, but I
Right.
understand what you're saying. Bears can be aggressive to humans, and what happens to bears? Yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, with the education component, like, look at drinking and driving. There's tons of education, right? It still happens, right? So you could educate people to the end of the days, and, you know, kind of piggyback on your analogy, like, back in the day, people, like, took responsibility. Some people don't like being held accountable and don't like rules. And, you know, and the frustration part for us is that we get a call, we go, hey, there's no bylaw in place. We reach out to our partners, go, hey, is there anything you can help us with? Can we look at this avenue? They said, no, we don't have any authority. Okay, reach out to RDCK. So it's like the circle, and then we get the calls back from clients or from victims or complainants and go, well, what are you guys doing? And I have to be honest, but there's nothing we can do at this point, you know, and it's sad because, like, I've said, like, you know, I don't want someone to get viciously attacked, and our training is very limited, right? Like, obviously, like, we deal with wildlife when needs be, but, like, our training, you know, is a firearm, right? I don't have the tools to. If I have a leash, I'll do my best to try to wrangle a dog, absolutely. But if a dog is actively attacking somebody, maiming a child or somebody, I'm going to step in and you know, euthanize that dog because there's a public safety risk there, right? And we don't want that to happen. I'll be honest. The last thing I want to do in my day.
Yeah,
So, right, like, so it's.
Your analogy is good, except people own dogs, and bears are wild animals.
I agree with the people part of it, trust me, and we're not dog owners at all. We love them.
I am, my dog is very good.
May I ask one more question? Like, I'm new to the valley here, right? We moved here for a reason, because it wasn't the city. And like, I can't get it out of my mind. How can we talk about spending this kind of money for something, like this valley survived for 100 years, 150 years without this? Why all of a sudden is it, now the world is coming to an end and we have to do it? Like, I know it's a bad thing, it's always been a bad thing. Like, you know, people trip in fields, they break their legs. Are we gonna make mud illegal? You know, like people do stupid things all the time, and there's always gonna be people doing dumb things. I'm asking the question, like, it doesn't make sense to me that the solution is always more bigger government. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I'm like wondering how the valley has survived all these years without RDCK helping. Like, it's amazing to me, maybe we'd all be dead or something. You know, I just wanted to make that statement.
Well, we're not coming in as Superman, and I'll let Walter talk to why he is bringing this forward, and it's because of, you know, a question that was asked at the public.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Walter.
So to answer your question, you know, back in the 1800s or whatever, population of the Spokane Valley was maybe 1,000 people or so. I don't have the exact figures.
It's 5,000.
But in the last little while, since the last, you know, it went up from 4,000. It's generally 4,000 people, pretty standard back for about 10 years. And then it jumped to 5,000. People come like yourself, you like the valley, you like the way it is, you like the lifestyle in the valley here, less government, etc. That's the way it's been. But people that come from different areas of the province, country, etc., they come from, an example would be, let's say, and I'm not saying it's Vancouver or Calgary, and I get a call. Walter, I was walking down the road the other day with my dog. I had the dog on the leash. It was dark, and I fell into a ditch. I want sidewalks and I want street lighting. That's what happens. They come from a municipality where they have dog control, etc. We don't. And unfortunately for everybody, the dogs do bite. And I get calls from people, they've been seriously injured, or their dog has been seriously injured that they was walking with. The dog was on the leash, was attacked. They took the dog to the animal hospital, and they're looking at $3,000 or $4,000 charge. So my response would take them to civil court to recover. Well, I can't. I know the people. They're just live down the road. So this is what's happening. Hopefully, if we get this bylaw in place, people understand that there is a dog control bylaw, and it's not dogs that are out there, not patrol, complaint-driven, dangerous and aggressive dogs that do bite people. And then there's a process, there's a warning, etc. We don't go out there and kill the dog right away. But once that gets around, they will hopefully pay some attention that they would have to control their dogs so people don't get bitten. And it's hard for me as a director. I get a lady call me, look, I've been bitten or whatever, I can barely walk now, I've got a walker, etc. It's heart-rending. And for me to sit there and not do anything, that's what I'm elected for, to respond to residents' concerns. So, I get calls, 1 or 2 calls or 3 calls, that's fine. This has been happening since 2010. It's not just like yesterday or the day before. Calls come in, and not much I can do. The RCMP, I've read, they've tried it, and I went to Attorney General, tried to enforce the Section 49, and they can't do that. It's there. They took it to Crown Council. Crown Council wouldn't take it on unless they had a bylaw officer. So there are problems here. And for me to ignore the problems, ignore the calls, that's not what I'm elected for.
Fair enough, but it's not every.
You can ask anybody here that calls me or sends me an email and let me know that I respond to every email, every call, and yeah, you send me emails, whether I agree with you or not, but I provide your response. And that's my responsibility. And I feel that I'm not doing my job if I don't move this forward. Whether it passes or not, the electorate will decide, not me.
RDKB, Area D, which also includes Christina Lake, Grand Forks, and Greenwood, have had a very similar dog bylaw, actually more extended too. It didn't just address with the dress of dangerous dogs, they also had nuance in there and barking and off leash. And they're withdrawing from the service. And that because it became a problem. It became this Hatfield and McCoy, and I'm not too sure if you're aware of this, but I've been spending 6 months researching this very subject. And that was quite concerning because they've had this service now since 1976, and now since June of 2025, when their commissioner, their contractor said, I can't do this anymore. It's just ridiculous. It had 750 kilometers of road. Area H has 766 kilometers of residential road, and that's basically driving from Vancouver to Caslow. That's the distance of road out here. And this contractor, they responded to the complaints. It had to go to every single resident, and people were complaining about the stupidest things. And the contractor had to respond to all these complaints, and it became not cost effective for the contractor, and the contractor quit and said, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore. And he quit in June 27th, 2025. And they haven't had any service, and now they're withdrawing the service. Now they're getting rid of it, and they've had it for a long time. So.
And one of the reasons that we're doing dangerous and aggressive dogs is just because of that. I know that directors from those areas, that they had dog control and all kinds of dogs.
Okay.
This is only dealing with dogs that bite people and aggressive and dangerous. We're not going to do dog patrols. It's going to be call driven.
Fair enough, but you also know from the Slocan Valley living out here, people could say that that's an aggressive dog when it's not. You do know that too. Yeah.
Yes, that possibly would happen, but that's why we have a dog control officer, bylaw officer, to investigate that and see if it's a legitimate complaint or not.
If it goes through, it'll be an interesting experiment.
And if it doesn't work,
we just see how if it does get abused.
Yeah, we do get vexatious complaints, and we're pretty savvy in figuring out what's vexatious versus what is real. We have chronic complainers as well. Doesn't matter what the dog walks across their yard, they're complaining, and we handle that. It's sometimes a mental health issue, and so. I mean, we have the discretion, And we take that because we don't want to be out there just, enforcing if it's not something that needs to be enforced. But if this bylaw passes, that dog control person will only respond to complaints, will not be driving around the roads, and will help the team that Eric oversees to investigate that incident. And if we find it's not valid, or if it's a Hatfield and McCoy situation, we extract ourselves from the situation.
I'm pretty good at reminding people of the crying wolf scenario when I start seeing this. That's typically a pretty good approach to people, to realize that we want to make sure your complaints have some substance. And just one last thing to follow up on is this is in the interest of public safety. Okay? And that's why it's narrowed down to dangerous and aggressive dogs only.
This might be a Walter question, but anyway, anybody can help with this. So Area H, I'm thinking, is probably the biggest or one of the biggest geographical areas in RDCK. But at any rate, it's
It's the
huge.
biggest population area in RDCK, not the geographical area.
Oh, okay, I'm thinking, yeah, anyway, it's big. But I know that there have been many things in the past where Area H has been divvied up between Area H South and Area H North. And I think the bylaws are different in each of those areas for certain things. I'm just curious about that. What happens if, say, the vote goes very pro dog control in Winlaw, but goes the other way up here? Is it going to still apply to the entire area, or will it get divvied up similarly?
I can answer that.
I'll let Danny go.
So it has to be 50% of the whole area. And so if we do see that a lot of the count is higher for supporting the service in Winlaw, then that would be taking it back and probably, I was gonna comment about the whole with government and services. We don't just create services for the sake of creating services. It is based on community. And as Walter said, this has been going on since 2010. So that's 16 years of dog complaints before we're even looking at establishing this service. So it's not something we jump on right away and say, hey, we're going to make a service for Area H. It is based on the community support, the community comments. And sometimes, like you say, there's the people that cry wolf and such like that, but it's been 16 years of dog complaints. And there's a feasibility study. There is then looking at the service establishment. And in this case, it's an electoral vote. The electors get to vote on this and determine if this service is what they want. It is up to the people of the communities to determine that. With what you're asking, if we did see that there was a large support in one area and it's not 50%, then that bylaw is no longer going forward. So we no longer, that bylaw itself, it's done. The electors have voted in the assent vote. It's under 50%, so this service is not going through. Can we then maybe look at, as a regional district, the feasibility of having it for a portion of Area H? Yes, if that is what we're hearing from the community. Yeah. So, but if the community is quiet and nobody is looking at that anymore and says, okay, the assent vote failed, we don't have the service, we're okay with that, then that bylaw, it's done. It's done. It's not going anywhere. The ministry is not going to approve it. We're not going to adopt it, and it's not going forward. We would have to relook at it and look at the feasibility for that portion of Area H and what the taxes would look like, and if that's even reasonable to have that service.
So I guess that answers that question to a large degree, that it might, if the vote is very different north to south, maybe you go back and have another look at it.
And that's happened in the east, actually. I believe it was for the fire service.
Okay.
And so one portion of the east was in great support of having the fire hall, and the other portion did not want it. And so now we are working with that portion of area, I'm not sure which areas it is, area C, to see if that's feasible.
Well, Walter, you made mention that area I's only part of area I has a dog.
That is correct. Like when there was a board resolution to do area H, the director of area I says, I want a portion, but I don't have that service in my area. But that hasn't been acted on. Now, to answer your question there, like before even considering this, I have to present to the board and to staff that there is a request for a dog control bylaw. And that's why the 2020 poll. Now, when you take a look at it, we did polls by community, working down. The average was 53% of all of Area H residents by community were in favor of it. There were some that had 58% that were in favor, some 54% or whatever, but it varied. But right throughout the whole area, the only area that didn't want a dog control bylaw is the area that I live in. But going back in history, that was the area that requested a dog control bylaw back in 2011. And we had a meeting about there. They wanted a dog, but properties are sold. It was a change in demographics. People moved in, and they figured they're living in, well, keep Crystal the wild is the signs that I see when I drive home. So and the north and south is a little bit different because there are different services that we have in the north and different services in the south, or defined areas, like, for example, fire halls, etc. So we have a defined area for fire halls that Angela spoke about. So if the results come in all of Area H that the bylaws voted down, I've done my job. And then whether we're going to go for another bylaw or whatever, not likely. The mosquito bylaw in Winlaw, we had petitions for and against, and they're pretty equal. And I don't have a stake in any bylaw. I mean, to me, my job is to bring it to the residents. I've done that. Whether it passes, whether it fails, the residents will decide. It won't be me.
So I hope we've provided you all with some information and some education and answered your questions. We're going to wrap it up this evening unless you have any other further words.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank
thank
you
you.
guys for your time, we
Yeah.
appreciate it.